Hey everybody, welcome to our free conversation class today. You guys, today we are in week 11, which is the last week of the quarter here. So it's a special class. Yesterday we had a holiday, Juneteenth, and that is the holiday I want to speak about today. And so, my friends, if you want to join us again, or if you want to join us again in the next quarter, in the summer quarter, here is a QR code that you can scan to be part of our WhatsApp group. And that's where we send the links, the teacher, the topic, everything you want to see in class. So please, you can always watch us on YouTube and watch the live stream later if you want, but join us on Zoom. I want to talk with you. Practice your English. So let's see who is on Zoom today. Let's see who's here. Okay. Hello, hello. How are we? Good morning. Hello, hello. Good morning. Hey, Melvin. Hey, Weem. Hey, Fernando. How are we?
I'm fine.
I'm good.
Good.
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Good, good. You guys, Friday morning. It's Friday. Here in Massachusetts, we've had some warmer weather, almost hot. And it's been so nice after a lot of rain the past few months. So today is Friday, June 20th. I believe tomorrow is officially the first day of summer in the northern hemisphere here. And it's also we're almost in the last day of our spring quarter, here at Approach. At Approach, you guys, we have 11 weeks of classes, and we have 4 quarters of 11 weeks per year, which is winter, spring, summer, and fall. So we're finishing our spring quarter, and we're gonna have a 2-week break after today. So today is actually the last class. I'm lucky to have the last class of spring 2025 quarter. And so we're going to take a 2-week break. The students have a break, the teachers have a break, and we will return on Monday, July 7th, after the 4th of July holiday. So we have a couple weeks of vacation time. So we won't have class for about 2 weeks. And we'll return on Monday, July 7th, just so you guys know. Do you have any plans for any holidays, any weekend plans coming up?
Not really.
No.
But since I didn't work yesterday, I went to the ocean. I went to the
Yeah.
beach.
Nice.
It was not raining, so it
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah. That's so nice. We also didn't work here yesterday. And that's the topic I want to talk to you guys about today is Juneteenth. So we'll talk about if you've heard of what is Juneteenth, what does it mean, what different vocabulary comes with this topic. It's a history topic, and it is a holiday that began in 2021 officially in the United States. And so that's something I want to talk about. That's why we didn't have class yesterday, was because of the holiday. So yesterday we relaxed. I went to the pool at my apartment for the first time. It was so fun. I was like, yes, finally summer weather. But my friends, let's see. So what I want to ask you guys first, I have some questions over here for us to discuss. What I have here is, what do you know already about Juneteenth? Have you heard of Juneteenth before? If no, that's okay. It's not like Christmas where everybody knows. So that's the point of today, is to educate people on what is Juneteenth. So, my friends, do you know anything about Juneteenth? Have you heard of this before?
To me, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Most recently.
Yes.
I searched about it today.
Yeah.
And I get some points about it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Awesome. That's what I'm saying. It's still a newer, federally recognized holiday in the United States, we would say. It was recognized in the past by Black communities, but it was not recognized by everybody for a long time. So we're going to talk about what is Juneteenth, what happened, what's the point of it, and why is it relevant today? So that's something we'll talk about. So I have another question here that kind of maybe gives us some more information. What national holidays exist in your country to celebrate freedom or independence? So, for example, we have Independence Day here, 4th of July in the United States, and that is one holiday to celebrate independence. What is your country's holiday to celebrate independence?
I'm sorry. What is the question again?
What is the holiday in your country that is similar to Independence Day?
Well, we have Independence Day as well on
Yes.
September 14th,
Mm-hmm.
and we celebrate it on September 14th and the 15th with parades
Mm-hmm.
and what we call banda de guerra or war band. Basically, these guys playing the drums and
Yeah.
all of that.
No,
It's a
cool.
display.
So cool. Wow. Very nice. Thank you, Melvin. So, in Nicaragua on September 14th. Cool. Independence
14th,
Day.
and, yes, 14th.
Nice. Anybody else? Do you guys have an Independence Day holiday?
Independence Day in Brazil is the 7th of September.
Mm-hmm.
And children and schools bands
Yes.
walking and making music
Yeah.
through the street.
We
It's
call
really
that,
cool.
in English, we call that a parade.
Yes.
Parade. Nice. That's awesome. I know we've had a lot of Independence Day holidays based on history of our countries. Brazil being colonized by Portugal, United States being kind of colonized by England in the sense as well. So many of our countries celebrate an Independence Day from another country.
Nicaraguan by Spanish.
Yes, I was going to say from Spain. I wasn't 100% sure. So that is something that's important to think about Juneteenth. It's not the same as Independence Day, the 4th of July, but it is a day of freedom and a day of celebration of independence. So I have some different vocabulary that I wanted us to cover because I want to share a video with you guys, but I want to review the vocabulary before we watch the video. I think that's more helpful than after. So I have 6 different words here, and I want us to discuss if you already know the meaning. Can we use it in a sentence? So first I have here emancipation. Emancipation. Do you know the word or the meaning of emancipation?
It's to become free from slavery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a sentence, I would say emancipate myself from mental slavery.
Ooh, that's a great sentence. Definitely emancipate myself from
That's
mental
from Bob
slavery.
Marley, actually.
Really?
From a song. Yep.
That Bob Marley sounds like he would definitely say that kind of thing. Definitely.
Yep.
Wow, so interesting. Yes, it's to be free from something. We also, at least in the United States, sometimes use it for like teenagers who are trying to be free from their parents. So you can say, I want to emancipate myself from my parents. That maybe you're like 17 years old, you're not quite 18, and your parents you have a problem with them and you want to do this legal battle. But in general, to be free. And in this context, to be free from slavery, 100%. Something that you'll see in the video is a document called the Emancipation Proclamation. That is something that is a document the 1800s in the United States when many of the slavery and freedom rights issues were occurring. So the Emancipation Proclamation was a document, a law document stating that slavery was over. And so slaves were emancipated, were freed. And then, of course, we have the word slavery. Many of us are most likely familiar with this word. We hear it a lot in the history context, and we know the dark history of slavery in the world. Not only the United States, but other countries as well.
Right.
But today we're discussing slavery in the United States specifically. We have the words abolish and abolition. So abolish is the verb, abolition is the noun. What does it mean to abolish something?
To eliminate?
Yes, exactly, to eliminate. So the people would try to abolish or end, eliminate slavery. And somebody who fought for this was called an abolitionist, like scientist, abolitionist, somebody who wanted to end slavery. They fought for abolition, or they wanted to abolish. So different forms of the word itself, the verb, the noun. Civil rights. Have you heard of this before? What is civil rights? When they say civil, what do they mean?
Everybody.
Everybody, like a civilian, the everyday person, definitely. And so, have you heard of this phrase, civil rights, in relation to U.S. history before?
Yes.
What did you hear about it, Melvin?
About those rights that we have as human beings, right? And we're supposed to be able to exercise those rights. It could be freedom of speech.
Yes.
Which is something which is kind of hard nowadays where I live, but
Definitely.
you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, exactly. I think that to have the everyday right, to have human rights, freedom of speech, equality, those are the basic human rights that we should have. And these were not given to slaves. And that was the fight for not only during slavery, but after slavery, where even if they weren't slaves, they still weren't treated equally. And so civil rights was the fight for that. In the United States, we have the holiday Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Martin Luther King Jr., but he was a reverend and a peaceful activist for integration, so black and white people and all people being together and having equal rights. And he was killed for his preaching about this. We also have Rosa Parks, the woman who would not give up her seat on the bus for a white person. And the time, black people had to go to the back of the bus, the white people could sit at the front of the bus. And so these are people who were fighting for civil rights. We have the word here, legacy. What does that mean, legacy? Let's see. Have we heard of legacy? They left behind a legacy, for example.
Yes, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
It's like leaving a teaching or a way of living or memory of you.
Yeah.
behind.
Exactly. So to leave behind a legacy is to leave behind we would say maybe also in English, a lasting impression that you have done something good usually, and that you have done it for some time. You are recognized for it. So, for example, a basketball player like Michael Jordan, the legacy of Michael Jordan. You think about his career as a basketball player, for example. So, a legacy of something is somebody that's recognized. So the legacy that is left behind, for example, by Martin Luther King Jr. and other people that we'll discuss, such as Frederick Douglass. We'll talk about that after. Okay, and then we know these last two words pretty well, I'd say. We know celebration. Juneteenth is a celebration, a party, not only a party, but a commemoration. And that is for equality, to be equal, to have the same rights and abilities and not be treated differently. So those are our vocab words today. So I want to show you guys this video from TED. I don't know if you've ever watched a TED Talk before, but TED Ed is a great resource for learning a lot of new things. And they have really wonderful videos that are educational with good illustration to follow along visually as well. So this video is about 5 minutes long. I understand it's a little long, but it's really good detail about what is Juneteenth. And so in a moment, we're going to show this video about the history of slavery in the United States and the laws that were passed and what happened with Juneteenth and what happens today with Juneteenth. And then we'll have a discussion about it. So let's watch this video and talk about it in a few moments. We're waiting to share the sound. Sorry. I wanted to try something different, and my dear Marcelo is figuring it out for us. I said, I want to show them a video. This is a really good video. I think we're all set. Let's see here. No, we're not. One moment. In the meantime, let's see. One of the most important things to think about when you're watching this video as well is that this is just a small video compared to all of the history that happens. And so I always encourage you to learn and read more about what we talk about here. This is just a small piece, but you can watch more videos and learn more about the history of slavery in the United States and civil rights and how it can be related to the history of your country as well, and think about what's going on in human rights in your country. And it's very relevant still today. So that is something I definitely want you guys to always do, is continue educating yourself on these subjects. So we're just getting the video here. We're almost ready. And then we'll watch it together. Like I said, TED Ed. I love TED Ed. I think it's actually a really good resource for students, for learners, for teachers. And it's something that they update all the time. A lot of TED videos a TED Talk can be so interesting, and some can be so long. But TED Ed is shorter videos that really give the whole idea in just under 5 minutes usually, under 10 minutes maximum. And so we have, I believe, our video here. Yeah, we have our video here ready for you.
One day, while hiding in the kitchen, Charlotte Brooks overheard a life-changing secret. At the age of 17, she'd been separated from her family and taken to William Nealon's Texas plantation. There, she was made to do housework at the violent whims of her enslavers. On that fateful day, she learned that slavery had recently been abolished, but Nealon conspired to keep this a secret from those he enslaved. Hearing this, Brooks stepped out of her hiding spot, proclaimed her freedom, spread the news throughout the plantation, and ran. That night, she returned for her daughter, Tempe, and before Nealon's spiteful bullets could find them, they were gone for good. For more than 2 centuries, slavery defined what would become the United States, from its past as the 13 British colonies to its growth as an independent country. Slavery fueled its cotton industry and made it a leading economic power. 10 of the first 12 presidents enslaved people, and when U.S. chattel slavery finally ended, it was a long and uneven process. Enslaved people resisted from the beginning by escaping, breaking tools, staging rebellions, and more. During the American Revolution, Vermont and Massachusetts abolished slavery, while several states took steps towards gradual abolition. In 1808, federal law banned the import of enslaved African people, but it allowed the slave trade to continue domestically. Approximately 4 million people were enslaved in the U.S. when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Lincoln opposed slavery, and though he had no plans to outlaw it, his election caused panic in southern states, which began withdrawing from the Union. They vowed to uphold slavery and formed the Confederacy, triggering the start of the American Civil War. A year into the conflict, Lincoln abolished slavery in Washington, D.C., legally freeing more than 3,000 people. And 5 months later, he announced the Emancipation Proclamation. It promised freedom to the 3.5 million people enslaved in Confederate states, but it would only be fulfilled if the rebelling states didn't rejoin the Union by January 1st, 1863. And it bore no mention of the roughly 500,000 people in bondage in the border states of Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri that hadn't seceded. When the Confederacy refused to surrender, Union soldiers began announcing emancipation. But many southern areas remained under Confederate control, making it impossible to actually implement abolition throughout the South. The war raged on for 2 more years, and on January 31st, 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. It promised to end slavery throughout the U.S., except as punishment for a crime. But to go into effect, 27 states would have to ratify it first. Meanwhile, the Civil War virtually ended with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee on April 9, 1865. But although slavery was technically illegal in all southern states, it still persisted in the last bastions of the Confederacy. There, enslavers like Kneeling continued to evade abolition until forced. This was also the case when Union General Gordon Granger marched his troops into Galveston, Texas on June 19th and announced that all enslaved people there were officially free and had been for more than 2 years. Still, at this point, people remained legally enslaved in the border states. It wasn't until more than 5 months later, on December 6, 1865, that the 13th Amendment was finally ratified. This formally ended chattel slavery in the U.S. Because official emancipation was a staggered process, people in different places commemorated it on different dates. Those in Galveston, Texas, began celebrating Juneteenth, a combination of June and 19th, on the very first anniversary of General Granger's announcement. Over time, smaller Juneteenth gatherings gave way to large parades, and the tradition eventually became the most widespread of emancipation celebrations. But while chattel slavery had officially ended, racial inequality, oppression, and terror had not. Celebrating emancipation was itself an act of continued resistance, and it wasn't until 2021 that Juneteenth became a federal holiday. Today, Juneteenth holds profound significance as a celebration of the demise of slavery, the righteous pursuit of true freedom for all, and a continued pledge to remember the past and dream the future. People resisted slavery in the U.S. as long as it persisted, uncovered the story of those who escaped slavery, and created a secret society in the Great Dismal Swamp with this video. Or learn about the incredible courage of Harriet Tubman with this video.
I took 2 things that I love, dancing and dogs, and I made them into a successful business. Hi, I'm Ronnie. I'm the owner of Ketato, and I teach people all over the world how to dance with their dogs on my website.
Okay. Let's exit out of there. Amazing. Okay, my friends. So, first, I want to talk about it here together. Sorry if it was so fast. Again, the link is in the chat, so if you want to watch it again, you can slow it down. But that is the idea. If I had to ask you from that, what is Juneteenth? What would you say? What did you learn from that? Why is it called Juneteenth?
Because it happened on Juneteenth, but basically, what's Juneteenth? I would say when the slaves realized that they were not slaves anymore.
Exactly. So, like the video said, on June 19th, 1865, some of the last slaves found out they were free. But actually, we found out it's really in December was the last end of slavery. But this was a time where slaves were not allowed to learn how to read or to write, and therefore, if they didn't learn, they didn't know that they were free. The Emancipation Proclamation was something you would learn from interacting with the outside world, with reading, with newspapers, and this is not something that the slaves had access to. And so for 2 years, they didn't know they were free. And this is marking the fact that on that day they found out that they were free and that slavery had not officially ended, but almost.
Yes.
Exactly. So they combined the words June and 19 for Juneteenth. That is why we say Juneteenth. And that is the idea behind this holiday. And so one of the things is that, like the video said, it wasn't until 2021, just 4 years ago, that it is an official holiday in the United States. And so at least here in Massachusetts, we had no school, and many students are already on summer vacation. But for example, Approach, we had no school. Banks are closed, but other stores, restaurants, they were still open. And so it was a day to reflect and think about these things. So if you had to explain to somebody what was happening, if they say, I don't know what this holiday is, now you can at least explain a little bit more and say, hey, this is something to do with the end of slavery in the United States, when the last slaves were finding out they were free. So I wanted to talk about at least two important people. So I'm going to go back to my other screen. I want to talk about here, I'm going back to my other screen, for Frederick Douglass. This is his picture here. They didn't mention him in the video, and I wanted to talk about him. Frederick Douglass, it says circa. So if you see something like this in English, see circa, the time they were born. 1818 to 1895, he was a formerly enslaved African American. So he was a slave that escaped when he was young. And he became one of the most powerful voices for abolition, civil rights, and social justice in 19th century America. So this is a good time to practice your numbers too. I know numbers can sometimes be, especially a year, so hard. So this is a guy who was a slave, he escaped, he fought for freedom, and he was one of the most well-known, and he published a lot of books, and he wrote many things. We also have Opal Lee, and she's still alive today. She's old, but she's still alive today. She used to be a teacher, and she is what they call the grandmother of Juneteenth. So she was born in 1926 in Texas, so she's almost 100 years old. She has advocated for Juneteenth. It's growing up for her as a black woman in Texas when she was young. There was a story about her family's home being burned down by racist people. And so she really fought a long time to educate people and have Juneteenth as a recognized holiday. And so when it became a holiday, she was there. This was with Joe Biden in 2021, like they said, and she was there when they were signing the paper. So she is a big face of Juneteenth. Okay, so now I have some questions for you guys. I want you to think about it and talk with me here. Why do you think it took more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation for all enslaved people to be freed. So we just talked about this a little bit. Why did it take 2 years for them to find out?
Back in the days, they didn't have WhatsApp or YouTube or any social
Exactly.
media, so
Yes,
and of
exactly.
course their owners would not maybe freely let them know, right?
Correct. Exactly. Like we saw in the video,
Yes.
they were angry about losing their free labor and they didn't want to tell them, so they didn't.
Teacher, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that even when some slaves realized that they were not slaves anymore, they just didn't know. They didn't have a place where to go. They didn't
Correct.
know. They didn't know what to do
Yeah.
or anything else. So they decided to stay in the plantations because they had food, but the relationship changed from slave to owner to employer and employee.
That,
So they were making some money, they were getting
yeah.
food, and they decided to stay in the plantations. They didn't know anything else.
Yeah. That's something that's very similar with people who have been in jail for a long time. It's very difficult sometimes to adapt to the world outside of what you've been in all that time. When you've been in slavery, you don't know anything else. And not every slave master was horrible. Of course, there were many that were. But there were some slaves that had a better relationship with their slave master, and therefore they had a better life than others. And so I could definitely see something like that happening back then. Definitely. And yeah, they didn't have WhatsApp. They didn't have internet. They had people going on horses and maybe dying on the way because it's such a long journey. So that is definitely part of the reason why they did not find out for so long. Okay, so I have some questions that I want you guys to see here too. Should holidays like Juneteenth be celebrated by everyone or only a specific group? So this is kind of saying, should this be celebrated only by Black people, or should this be celebrated by all people? What do you guys think?
I think all people,
And tell me why.
because everyone should have human rights, and we should respect Black people because they are also human beings, and
Exactly.
they have rights.
Exactly. Thank you, Habiba. I think that's the most important thing, is that maybe it's important that we all celebrate this holiday in recognition that we all care about human rights and we all support human rights. I agree. And that's a discussion that they've had in the United States. For example, should a white person like me celebrate Juneteenth? Or should we rather reflect and think about the reason behind Juneteenth? So there's also a difference between like celebrating and reflecting, thinking, analyzing. That's something so important to consider, at least in the United States when it comes to racial issues and things like that, is really considering everybody's perspective. At least that's how we think here in the US most of the time. We try. Now, we talked a little bit about Independence Days in your country. And so the second question here, how is Juneteenth similar to or different from freedom-related holidays? Do you have any holiday that's specifically like Juneteenth, where it's a different kind of Independence Day?
Yeah, we have a Labor Day on 1st May.
Yes, many countries have the Labor Day. And what is the connection that you can make?
In our country and Labor Day, all laborers um, have holidays. Our school closed, and we celebrate the Labor Day, and we feel that they have rights. We should respect them, and we have to do good to them. Um,
Yeah, that's exactly, I got you. All labor, slave labor or non-slave labor, is work that needs to be recognized. People work hard every day and they deserve a break. They deserve recognition for their hard work. Yes, I agree. I agree. Amanda, you say, I think Juneteenth should be celebrated by everyone so that it's remembered and this never happens again. Yes, that is so important. We talk about this with, for example, World War II, etc., history repeating itself. We don't want history, the negative history like that, to repeat. We want to learn so that it doesn't happen again. And that is part of this, is learning the horrible side of slavery and what happened, and the fact that so many things meant people didn't know they were free. Imagine all the people in those 2 years that maybe died and they could have been free, but they didn't know. Things like that to consider. Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So this is kind of leading into this next question here, and we can come together on the other screen in a moment. Do you think remembering difficult parts of history helps build a better society today? It's a deep question. It's an intense question, but I want us to talk about it together over here. Do you think remembering difficult parts of history help build a better society today? When you learn about the difficult history in your country, why do we learn about these difficult things? Let's talk about it.
But we try not to do them again.
Exactly. We try not to do them again.
and because to know our past people how they suffer for their country, and what are we doing now? I think it is good to know that our past history, that what the people do for the country, and we have to do good for our country.
Yes, exactly. I agree. I agree. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Weem, go ahead.
Yeah. For me, to remember the difficult history, and also to help us learn from the past.
We must learn from the past. It's extremely important. Yes. So, like I said, an example, like what we see happening right now in the world. What's happening today in the world is a lot. It is intense. It is difficult. And we have to think about what happened in the past. And it is difficult because not everybody thinks about it. But for sure, we don't want to repeat these things that happened in history. And so we want to learn about it. We want to educate people. We don't want to be ignorant to different things that have happened in our country's history, even if it didn't affect us. So that's so important. Is there anyone else who would like to share?
And also, it's built more fair and to be understand for this society.
So this is something to think about when you are considering the different holidays, the Independence Day that happens in your country, is to learn more about the history behind the people who are gaining independence and why did they try to gain that independence? What happened? Learning about U.S. history is not always the most exciting thing for people, especially if you're not living in the U.S. It's like, oh, why do I care? But we can always relate these issues to our country's history as well, to our homes, to our lives, to things that we've heard about. And if you ever decide that you want to live in the United States potentially or visit, these are important things to learn about, because these are conversations that Americans have together, is about what is Juneteenth, and let's have a discussion about, for example, people who think we shouldn't celebrate. Oh, let's not celebrate Juneteenth, or let's celebrate, and discuss the history and talk about it. So if you ever are considering that, it's so important to learn about that country's culture a little bit. Amazing. Amanda, in Brazil, we have a holiday on November 20th, which is called National Black Consciousness Day, which was created to celebrate the struggles of social movements against racism. Yes. I know not all the history about slavery in Brazil, but I know that Brazil had slavery longer than the United States. It was made illegal in 1888 in Brazil, so almost 30 years later. And it is part of why Brazil has such a rich Black culture, African culture in different places as well. And we see racism still happening. I know that in soccer a lot. For example, I think it's Vinicius Jr. talks a lot about racism in soccer. So Brazil still has a lot of ties to this, definitely, in terms of learning about and progression, recognizing these things. Definitely.
Teacher,
Yes?
I have a question.
Yes.
In the past, why the white people didn't like black people? What is the reason?
That's a great question. I wish I knew their thought, but I don't feel the same way as them, obviously. A lot of times it was, they were not educated on, they simply thought that a different skin color meant that they were like not a human, that they were different, that they were of less intelligence. It was really that white people at the time were quite ignorant, and can still be, but they were, as a white person I say this, back then they scientifically thought they could prove that black people were less than white people, which is not true. And so they saw a different skin color, and they saw people living in a tribal area. They weren't following, for example, Christianity. And they saw them as almost as indigenous in a way, and that they needed to colonize them almost, or that they could maybe use them in some way.
Or like animals sometimes.
Yes,
They said
exactly.
when they came to our land, they saw our Indian people, the indigenous, as animals.
Yes, definitely. That is something that, personally, like I said, I will never understand why they thought that way, because I don't think that way. And that's why it's so important to talk about these things, to make sure people don't think that way, or educate them if they don't know. I agree. Azizi, you wrote here about Eid. Yes, we did celebrate Eid not that long ago. We had Eid 1. To me, it's like Eid 1 and Eid 2, just because I don't know the full name all the time. But Eid is definitely a time of reflection and thinking. When you're fasting during Eid, you're fasting because you are kind of, as much as I understand, in solidarity with people who don't have enough food. It's how you understand what it's like to go through these things. And so I actually think fasting itself is a really beautiful thing of showing compassion and reflection about other people and what they have in their life. Definitely, definitely. Okay, so let's see here. We have I actually have, you guys, Marcelo's gonna kill me today. I have another video, but it's actually about, from yesterday, the Juneteenth celebrations here in Massachusetts. This video is not very long, it's shorter than the other one. And this is actually good practice for listening to the news in English. This comes from one of our channels, our news channels here in Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, we do have Juneteenth celebrations. We're not like Texas, but we do have Juneteenth celebrations. Massachusetts was a very important part in abolition, if you guys remember from the video. So this video here that we're gonna share is about the celebrations yesterday, just yesterday, here in Massachusetts specifically. So my dear Marcelo's gonna help and get that up here for us in a moment. The topic here, Mohammed said, what is the topic? The topic, Mohammed, is the holiday Juneteenth.
I saw the
And this holiday happened just yesterday, June 19th. It's a holiday that celebrates the kind of end of slavery, in a sense, when the last slaves found out they were free in the United States. And so yesterday we didn't have class, and I wanted to discuss why is because of this holiday. So in just a moment, we're going to share this video here about here in Massachusetts specifically. All right. Oh, hold on, sorry, we need the audio. Give me one moment. Okay.
Erica, a day of sorrow and joy to remember our Black ancestors in slavery. We heard a drum call from the stage, and of course there's the joy that comes with all of the camaraderie out here. It looks like a block party. It's a celebration all around the city. The Juneteenth flag goes up at Roxbury's Heritage Park to mark June 19th, 1865.
Juneteenth, or what some we call Freedom Day, it became a day of jubilation.
A parade also commemorates the freedom of slaves in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But how could that happen?
What actually happens is the emancipation freed African Americans who were enslaved in states in revolt. So in effect, it freed people where the federal government had no ability to enforce it.
Today is a reminder economic justice is also a civil right, especially when many are still in need of opportunity.
Occupational skills training that leads to careers, not just a job.
So I really appreciate you guys being here.
In the name of freedom and uplifting Juneteenth through uplifting and creating the first in the nation firefighter cadet program, so that we can support folks in the workforce and make sure that the fire industry is much more diverse. We've done it in the cannabis industry, we were doing it in the green industry. All of the Juneteenth activities, dancing, song, all meant to really be uplifting and to educate. We are at the Museum of the National Center of Afro-American Artists. It's open every Friday to Sunday. You can go inside. And at the Heritage State Park in Roxbury, they have wonderful exhibits in that building, and it's open daily for tours, 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. We're live in Roxbury. Rondella Richardson, WCBB, News Center 5.
Okay, so thank you guys. Okay. So that was here in Massachusetts, my friends. That was here in Roxbury, which is a small town, well, city near Boston. And again, I apologize if her speaking is fast. When you guys watch these kinds of videos at a native speaker speed, it can be so fast. So always, we have the link in the chat. You can watch it again, you can slow it down, but it's such good practice for listening to news in English. So that is showing what happened here in Massachusetts in this past day. There's many more videos I wish I could share with you guys. I would love to share them all about the celebration they had in Galveston, Texas itself. Big parades, barbecues, a lot of great times. And so One of the words that the woman used in the video we just saw was jubilation. And I thought, oh, I should have taught that word. Do you guys know that word, jubilation? What is a jubilation? Have you heard of that before? Let me scroll down here in the chat for you. Jubilation. They don't talk as fast as Lorelai Gilmore. Yes. So jubilation is another word for celebration. So if you ever hear that word, jubilation, it's not so common, but it's the same idea as celebration. So, joy, yes, Melvin, exactly. So now I wanted to ask you guys, I have a few more questions here, but we're almost done for the day anyways. What part of Juneteenth for you now is the most meaningful? You've learned about this holiday here now in the United States that's a newer holiday celebrating the end of slavery, for the most part, in the United States. What is the most meaningful part of this holiday? What did you learn today that you will remember, that you could teach other people? Let's talk about it here. I'm sorry, my friend. Can you start? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. If you could start again, that would be so great.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I am thinking that this is important because we need to think about the situation of Black people today.
Yes.
And the relation with the past.
Yes, I agree. That's a great point. What is happening today in 2025 with Black people in the United States, around the world, etc. And how can we continue to do better? Definitely. Amazing. Anyone else would like to share? What is the most meaningful part of this holiday?
That is to respect everyone, that there is no black or white, they are all same. So we have to respect and we have to give their rights.
Yes, we are all human. We are all still human. No matter what color we have underneath, we're all the same.
We have same hearts.
Exactly.
Same color.
Exactly.
We have everything is same, but some colors change. But we don't have to proud that I'm white, he's black. All are same, and especially we have to give their rights.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that we all are human.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Habiba. I think it's so important to consider, again, we are all human. Men, woman, American, not American, anything, black, white, we're all humans still. And that is what connects us more than anything else, is that there's also the human experience of everything. Definitely.
My opinion is that we should respect the humanity, not white, not black and other. We should respect the humanity.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. I agree. We should respect all humanity all the time. And that's the goal. That's what we are. Well, it maybe doesn't look like that right now in the world, but that is still the goal of the people, definitely. It's been a very interesting time we've had here in the United States and outside of the United States recently. Definitely. So, I just want to remind you guys that, again, today was the last class for about 2 weeks. We will return on Monday, July 7th. So you guys, we'll have 2 weeks with no class, I'm so sorry, but we'll return bigger and better than ever, always. And we'll have our teachers. We'll release our schedule on WhatsApp, so you guys have our WhatsApp group, be in our WhatsApp group. And we have our live streams of other classes. If you were not able to attend a certain class On YouTube, if you search Approach International Student Center, you can see all of our live streams of our other classes. So take your time if you have and watch something from the past to get some practice, even just listening practice. Just listening and hearing things in English will help you every day. So even though we don't have class for 2 weeks, don't stop studying, my friends. And I had a great time with you guys this quarter. We did it 11 weeks. That's amazing. I'm ready for summer quarter. 11 more weeks. We got it. And I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. All right? I'll see you guys.